It's time to strap in for another edition of the CarsGuide Podcast, the show that takes you beyond the test drive. This is episode number 216, Best Cars Coming in 2022. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James Cleary, and joining me in looking at the new sedans and hatches heading towards Aussie showrooms this year are two of our brilliant contributing journalists, Byron Mathioudakis. Hello, Byron. And
Hello.
Tim Nicholson.
Hello.
We'll also take a look at the fresh metal we've been driving this week and dive into your feedback. YouTubers, you can jump ahead via the time codes in the notes or click on the chapter markers in the timeline. So let's get into it. All right, we've been led to believe, the sales figures would have us believe that SUVs have swamped everything or people are buying utes and that's about it. But it's not the case. We've got conventional, what we'd term as conventional cars, hatches and sedans, new versions of those coming to Australia. And you guys have each authored a story just recently that ran over the break, the Christmas New Year break, about the best hatches and the best sedans arriving in Australia in 2022. And what I'd like to do is have each of you take the lead, as it were, on those two kind of subdivisions. And we'll walk through the key arrivals. If, Tim, we can start with you. A lot of Volkswagen Group action and some hot hatches as well.
Yeah, you're right, JC. It's the year of Volkswagen Group, apparently.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy one. I wouldn't call this year a bumper year for hatchbacks. As you say, I mean, everyone's just gone SUV crazy, so there are just going to be fewer hatchbacks arriving. But the ones that are coming are kind of quite exciting, particularly on the hot hatch front, which we'll get to. One of the most exciting things coming this year is a model called the Cupra Leon. For those who are unsure, Cupra is another Volkswagen Group brand that was spawned out of SEAT, which is their Spanish brand, which some of us will remember was sold on, I think it was Supermarket Sweep back in the 90s. They had you could win a SEAT.
Yes.
I wasn't born then, Tim, so I don't remember.
Right. Anyway, was it Cordoba? Anyway, a couple of different SEAT makes, yep.
Exactly. So they're launching with a few models, and one of them is the Leon, which is basically Cupra's version of the Volkswagen Golf. It's that same MQB platform that they all share, and it's really interesting launching a brand new brand, now. But I think what they've done is very clever because the designs are very edgy. It's very modern. It's not going to be to everyone's taste. Even the badge looks like a Transformers emblem. I think it's kind of appealing to people who do want something that's not one of those legacy brands, even though it comes from a gigantic.
And Leon sounds like the dodgy bloke that hangs out down at the bowling alley or the pool hall.
Exactly. But I mean, that's a very exciting prospect this year, and that's going to be coming mid-year.
Fantastic.
And then one of the first hot hatches to arrive is the updated version of a car that I love, the Ford Fiesta ST.
Yes.
Are you guys a fan of that car? I'm assuming.
Utterly devoted to that car. I think it's fantastic. And it's interesting, just to preempt you a bit, the thing that it would benefit from more than just about anything else is just a little more torque. And that's what we're going to get.
Yep, thankfully. Which is great. I mean, there's not much that car does wrong, but you're right. A little bit more grunt would have been great. It's getting a bit of a design refresh as well, and a bit of a tweak inside, like new seats and digital instrument cluster. So it's just going to be a much more compelling proposition, even with those few changes. So very excited for that one.
A little car like that, 320 Newton meters.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah,
it's one of the complete packages, that thing, isn't it? From that baby hot hatch, and now it gets a slightly friendlier face, which I think can only benefit the car.
Totally, that's a really good point. Actually, it does look a little sharper now.
Yep.
This next car is one that I'm probably the most excited about any of these. And that's the new Peugeot 308.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think this thing looks smashing. Like when they revealed this design, I was like, that's exactly what that thing should look like.
Points for use of the word smashing, by the way. I think that's, what are we talking, just post-war England is when that was at its peak.
I'm glad.
And I just want to support you on that. The 308, the previous 308 was one of the great underrated cars of the 2010s. And in fact, I voted it to be car of the year in 2014. It was that good, and consistently, especially the GTI version, I think it just showed the way. And I am with you, so excited. If Australians don't turn on to the 308, I'm going to just have to leave being a motor journalist, because I just won't understand. It is such a great drive. And
so this one's a bit bigger. It looks like it's what are you saying here, Tim? 110 millimeters longer. So that's a fair stretch in the body.
I think so too. I think that's a decent amount of length. It's still based on the platform, the MP2 platform, which the previous one was on, but this is a revised version of that. There'll be plug-in hybrid versions. If Peugeot, if we're to learn anything that they've done in the last few years, there should be an electric version as well. Whether we get that here or not is another question. But it's coming in the third quarter. I mean, I'm with Byron. Like, this should really give Peugeot a boost. It's such an exciting car.
And another theme seems to be the digital instrument cluster. It looks like, the launch is in 2022. That's almost going to be a given that people are moving to that. Yep.
Yeah. And it's interesting because they almost didn't get it because of the semiconductor shortage.
Of course. Yes.
The Australian outfit, they held off and they've delayed the launch so they can launch with it. And I think that's a smart move.
Gotcha. Yes, that's right. Just one more thing with the 308. This new one, you said, James, it's bigger. It's bigger because it addresses one of the few issues that people globally have with this car, and that's rear leg space.
Okay. So it's all gone in there. It's gone in there.
Exactly. So it should absolutely hit it out the park, or smash it out the park, as Tim would say.
Okay, well, that's good. Look, something to look forward to. Excellent.
And speaking of growing, so the next model that is coming in, that's coming in the second quarter, is the new Skoda Fabia. So that's Skoda's baby car, little light hatch. That is going to be quite a bit bigger than the outgoing model. The outgoing model is a fabulous little light car. I'm a big fan of that car.
Yeah, would you say fabulous or
fabulous?
I must say, whenever I hear that name, I can't help but think of the most beautiful man in the world, and I'm putting an O on the end rather than an A. Yeah.
I wonder if except when a seagull flies into his face.
That's unfortunate. Yes.
Yeah. But this is going to be sharing its platform with the current Polo, Volkswagen Polo, which is an excellent car. So it is quite a bit bigger, and I think that they'll probably get a few more sales out of this. Also, it looks really good. The redesign is a really, really smart job. And again, same as a lot of these cars, huge uptick in multimedia and a few other things. So we'll
bigger boot,
that one as well,
which is good.
Exactly.
And good on your Skoda for sticking with the super mini / light car market, not only in Australia, but globally, because it's a shrinking market because of smaller SUVs. Yeah. And I reckon it just, thumbs up.
Fair call.
For that. Yep.
The next one, Tim, is a good one. It's a good one.
Look, I mean, I think a lot of people are excited about this, and that is, of course, another Volkswagen product. God, there's so many. The Volkswagen Golf R. So that's in hatch, and the wagon is coming, I think, a little bit later, but the hatch will be first up around April. There's been a few changes to times and things like that with the Golf R.
Yep.
So look, it's a Golf R is always going to be exciting. It looks like a Golf R from the images. I think they've done a very good job in making sure they've had that kind of evolution of design. That same punchy 2-liter turbocharged engine. I mean, you guys, I guess, are probably fans of this car as well.
400 Newton meters now. 400 Newton meters. That, a couple of decades ago, that was big V8 territory. 400 Newton meters. That's amazing.
Yeah. 0 to 104.7 seconds. Like, this is going to be a fun car, and it just does what it does so well.
Yeah. There'd have to be a Bluebeard special edition, wouldn't there? The Golf R. The Golf R. Anyway.
I think a lot riding on that car, or there's a lot of expectation, because the previous Golf R, I thought, was one of the best versions of the Golf 7/7.5.
Yeah.
They really got that car right. So
because I've got it back in Golf 6 days, I thought the GTI was a better drive than the R. And then when the 7 and 7.5 arrived, it kind of flipped that script, and the R really came good. I agree.
Yep. And
So
in the end, it was also one of the top selling variants of the entire Golf range in Australia was the R. So that shows the power of that variant. Yeah.
Okay. And next up is a surprise in terms of the brand it's coming from, Tim.
Exactly. Well, the little Volkswagen again, but this time it's the Polo. So speaking about the Fabia before, this is not a full new model. This is just a facelift, but it's a smart facelift. They've brought in design elements from the Golf Mark 8, so it kind of looks like a mini Golf now. Mini Golf.
Another limited edition, just begging to be done.
100%. It's interesting. I've just written a story about the Polo. Actually, it's selling really, really well because they weren't affected by the semiconductor shortage. Because the Polo is actually sourced from the South African factory, not the German factory, which had all the problems with semiconductors. So the Polo is actually outselling the Golf at the moment because a lot of people are going, well, we can get this car now. There's no delays. It's quite a big, light car. And this one, again, just upticks in multimedia and safety and that kind of thing. So that will hopefully be another winner for Volkswagen.
Excellent. I'm for what it's worth, I'm a big Polo fan. I think it's just a terrific car. It's just got better and better in subsequent generations.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and we're getting down the list. Next, we're still in the same VW Group warehouse. What's coming out
really
next?
We've got the Audi A3, which is imminent.
Yes.
And this is another interesting redesign, particularly when you look at the high-powered performance versions. And I don't know what you two think, but I think the RS3, which will be coming later in the year, is a very sexy-looking thing. Of course, this will come first. This is just the regular run-of-the-mill A3. Similar engines to the outgoing version, but again, big tech upgrade, and look, we'll probably see electrified versions of this at some point.
And also some of what are now considered basics being included, like AEB, and again a digital cockpit like display for instruments and things. So bringing it up onto the pace for that kind of stuff too.
It'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see how that car performs, because the things that made the A3 different compared to its donor car, the Golf, that gap seems to be closing. I mean, with the electronics and the digitalization and the increased comfort and refinement.
The elephant in the kind of badge engineering room has always been the difference between an Audi badge and a VW Rondell, hasn't it? That so much under the skin is so similar, yet there's a premium there to be had.
Yep, absolutely. Next up, we're moving away from the Volkswagen Group for a little minute, and we're back in the Ford stable.
Unreal.
And the next model coming is the Ford Focus ST in the second quarter. Now, that's, again, another facelift, just like the Fiesta. It's interesting. I quite like the Focus ST in this generation. And again, they've just sharpened that styling up really well. It looks much more modern than the version they launched only a few years ago. No changes under the skin as far as I'm aware. I believe it's just mostly inside and the styling tweaks, but there's also now a more premium version. Like you've got the i30N and the N Premium, I think, and this is a similar strategy from Ford. So
called STX.
Correct. Yeah.
STX. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's. Do you run your own race, or do you watch what the competition's doing? And kind of, it's a tricky one as a product planner. But that's interesting.
Absolutely. And rounding out the hatchbacks for the year is one that I'm sure we're all pretty excited about, and that is the Honda Civic Type R in new generation, guys, and that'll be much later in the year.
Yep.
I mean, the regular version's only just launched late last year, so we won't see this for a while. But if that outgoing one's anything to go by, then I think we can all be pretty excited about this one.
Amazing. And, if the rumor mill is to be believed, we're looking at a 2-litre petrol turbo with 2 electric motors for just under 300 kilowatts. That's in that mental territory where you've got 2-litre engines producing 300 kilowatts and thereabouts.
It's crazy. And what's going to be interesting as well, JC, is looking at the pricing of this thing. If we're learning anything from the Civic, where there's only one grade at the moment and it's about $45,000 drive away from memory. So this thing, I mean, how much are we going to be looking at for the Type R? You know?
Yeah. Well, that's right. The outgoing version, I think you were saying 55 grand before you put it on the road. So yes, who knows what territory we'll head into with this new one.
Yep. And finally, I just have to say this behind me, the Honda E, is sadly not coming this year or probably ever to Australia, but I just had to show it because it's so pretty.
It's hard to believe that it wouldn't do well. But anyway, who are we to argue the toss? We don't know what's going on inside the boardrooms, etc. All right. Thank you heaps, Tim. Now, Byron, over to you on the even more conventional cars that many of us had believed were already gone, but there are new arrivals in the sedan arena. And again, we're talking about different powertrains and different tech that's being added to keep the whole format alive. Can we do a similar walkthrough, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you just touched on, it is the advancement of electrification that has probably thrown a lifeline to the sedan and liftback, and that's because essentially they tend to be lighter than SUVs and trucks and that sort of thing, which makes the powertrain more efficient, and they can get better range and that sort of thing. So, but the flip side is they're all expensive premium / luxury vehicles. So unfortunately, if you're waiting to hear about some sort of Holden Commodore style or Kia Stinger replacement,
it's not going to be that.
It's not going to happen, nor is the new Mondeo coming. That's China only for now. So
cool.
So kicking things off, the Genesis G80 Electrified, which is very much in that stratosphere of limousine luxury cars. This one goes up against the Mercedes EQS, which I will talk about in a moment. Hyundai, of course, being a powerhouse of electrification, as Korea is, and Kia too, of course, and SsangYong. Let's not forget little old SsangYong. We're talking about 500 kilometers of range, sub 5 seconds to 100, all-wheel drive, two electric motors, and 5 meter long.
Which is great.
Sedan.
500 kilometers of range, that's a solid number. And it's, so that's very impressive.
Yeah. But you can imagine that this car and the Mercedes EQS, which is also due this year, that one's coming in the second quarter, late in the first quarter. We're talking similar numbers as well, almost 500 kilowatts of power. The fastest one, of course, being the AMG is Tesla Model S Plaid fast.
Exactly.
3 seconds to 100. And, cars that are designed for German autobahns, autostradas in Italy and that sort of thing.
Which I think it's a question we touched on in recent weeks about, and we've had some feedback from listeners and viewers too, saying there's a big push on power because electric motors are so, dynamic. They get cars up and running fast. The acceleration is always pretty eye-opening. And whether or not people are going to be ready for this, and there's an onus on manufacturers to just be responsible, I suppose, in terms of how much power they actually put into these things.
Well, and we know that you can buy a Model 3 Tesla, another little electric sedan that is almost as fast for pretty much under 80 grand nowadays. And
absolutely. The performance Model 3 warps the time-space continuum. It is properly quick. Anyway, sorry. We're in AMG territory, which it'll be ridiculously fast.
Also, I just want to point out the EQ, the whole EQS range, I think it progresses also the design language of sedans. I mean, I love that kind of fastback styling of it. I think it's one of the prettiest Mercedes sedans in years. I think that it really is a striking standout thing. And I think when you want a luxury car, not only do you want the toys and electrification and speed, I think elegance and beauty should also be something that is a given if you're paying a premium for a vehicle. Don't you agree?
I agree. Well, talk about paying a premium and talk about, luxury sedan. The next cab off the rank is, at the top of that particular stratosphere. And we're not talking necessarily new tech under that car's bonnet. A couple of turbos and 12 cylinders.
Yeah, exactly. And it amuses me that Mercedes, or Daimler, as it used to be known until this week, I think, persists with the Maybach range. The Maybach S680 is really going up to the kind of like the Super Stratosphere up against the Rolls-Royce Phantom, the Bentley Flying Spur, a 6-liter twin turbo V12 that actually only goes to 104.5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean that's actually pathetic, laughable.
I know. I mean, Morris Minor can, if you add a zero, maybe a couple of zeros to the four.
It's quite interesting that the whole web thing, and particularly YouTube, and going down rabbit holes of YouTube, where some of these exceptionally rich people are actually putting themselves out there, and they're the ones that buy these cars. They're around. There aren't that many of them, quite obviously, but they're voracious. They have an appetite for buying new hyper luxury cars that beggars belief, but they're around, obviously.
Exactly. Well, it's also the funds of these cars in terms of sales from, billionaires and trillionaires and that sort of thing, I guess, pays for the safety tech and, all the other advancements that make
it's a very, very positive spin to put on that.
Otherwise, I mean, I don't know if you like the styling, everything I said about the EQS is the opposite for
Maybach, It's Miami style.
Yep,
too much.
All right. Well, anyway. and then we're still in Germany.
Yes, we're back from Uranus to Earth. Porsche Taycan.
Yeah.
It's this car is now, of course, on our roads, and we've got the sports wagon, but there are more variants coming with, increasing the appeal of a car which is already pretty much Porsche's most popular.
It's amazing. You know what? That's been one of the surprises for me. That was one of the biggest surprises for what it's worth of 2021 is how popular the Taycan has proved to be.
I know. And, this is the poster child, I think, for why people still want sedans. They still want efficiency. They still want sensibility in a car and, hopefully, and sexiness too. I mean,
yep.
I mean, you look at the the EQS, I think it's beautiful. And this car is beautiful. And it just shows the potential of great design in a traditional package that isn't old-fashioned, that doesn't look back, but looks forward. I love it.
Yep.
I love it.
And this, so the difference here is that we're getting a conventional rear-wheel drive sedan. Is that correct? Version of Taycan. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So it's more affordable. So that should just increase the appeal of the vehicle even more. I think the Taycan has certainly just kind of put a line in the sand for manufacturers to say, or importers rather, to say, showing that yes, people want sedans, they are willing to pay for electrification. So let's just get behind all that sort of stuff. Let's get the infrastructure going, and let's just catch up with the rest of the world.
All right,
as I said, poster child.
And the next one is almost word association for electrification, isn't it? I mean, it's the one that's really moved the whole game along. And now we were also talking performance. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I know. So the Model S, I mean, can you believe it's been like 10 years ago this year that thing really started, gaining momentum?
And what's it had? One cosmetic tweak during that time, really?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, this time around, though, we're talking, improvements that are absolutely necessary for a car that is more than a decade old, and that is a completely overhauled interior.
Right.
I mean, the exterior changes are minimal, and that shows the inherent rightness of this design. I think that to me, the Model S looks no less attractive now than it did back when it debuted. I think,
so true. It's aged really well.
2010 or whatever. But as opposed to the base Taycan, we're talking about the absolutely stonking high performance version, which not only gives you 637 kilometers of potential range, but goes from 0 to 100 in a record break in 2.1 seconds flat. I mean,
it's 761 kilowatts.
Wow. So and no wonder, I mean, we laugh at Elon Musk and his nuttiness, but gee,
could there be a new front page story? 761 kilowatt speed monsters on our roads.
Supercar scare like back in the early 70s.
Absolutely. I mean, we're getting into that same territory where these cars are, in the wrong hands. Wow.
Anyway, Tim, you were a motoring journalist back then, weren't you? In 71, 72. Do you recall?
Now, here's one that it kind of speaks to the fact that these stories went live over the Christmas and New Year break, because the next one has already touched down in Australia, but it is very fresh metal into Volkswagen showrooms.
Correct. And of course, that's the Arteon, the revised Arteon with its smiley face. I really like that face. The car looks great. This the Arteon is now the cheapest of the sedans that I'm talking about on this podcast. But it's also one of the cheapest sedans you can buy, certainly of a family size.
I've always thought that Volkswagen really knows its way around this format. In that the original one, the CC, I thought for the money was exceptional in that it punched well above its weight. It was as good as premium sedans, way above its price category. And I've got it. Yeah, SCC, a Spanish LE, and I think this one has the potential to be just the same. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, with the news, what we did learn over the summer holidays is that Volkswagen is going to discontinue the Passat sedan.
Right.
So this kind of underlines the importance of the Arteon even more. So, of course, as per most Volkswagen products, this car gets the updated Golf 8 MQB Evolution. Of course, there are front drive and all-wheel drive performance versions. The R line, which adds a little bit more flair and appeal to the car. Basically something that can maybe a Skoda Octavia RS or Mazda 6 Turbo or Hyundai Sonata R line, N line rather, buyer can aspire to get as well, or to move up to. So
cool. And just to show what a quiet year the Volkswagen Group's having in Australia. The next car.
Yeah, that's right. So we just give Volkswagen another call out because they have been very quiet in the rollout. And that, of course, is the Audi A8, the first production aluminium or modern aluminium all-wheel drive sedan, which really has it been more than 30 years. It's been, I think, next year's 30 years since the first of the aluminium A8s.
It was such a breakthrough at that time. It was pretty impressive, that whole all alloy architecture. Yeah,
that's right. So we're just talking about a mild facelift, but getting digital OLED LED taillights and digital matrix LED headlights, just the usual kind of facelift fare. But we're talking about a large, imposing, old school combustion engine sedan to go up against its perennial rival, the S-Class, and of course the BMW 7 Series and Lexus LS and so on, and some such. So,
and a single speaker audio just in the top of the dash, isn't it? No, actually, it's 23 speakers and 1,920 watts.
That's right.
It's going to be, they could go to one of those sound off things, and just open up the doors and set the dB meters flying. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, what do you need that many speakers for?
My Chimera has only one speaker. That still suffices. So,
sounds fine. Yeah.
And probably from the most relevant new sedan to come in 2022 in terms of popularity and market leadership in its segment, of course, is the evergreen C-Class, which gets mini S-Class looks now, an all-new platform. A lot of the S-Class technology has trickled down economics. Does work when it comes to Mercedes-Benz.
Trickled down automotive economics.
Yeah, yes. Exactly, yeah. Of course, this also jumps on the electrification bandwagon with 48-volt mild hybrid systems being available even in the cheapest version, the C200, and the bestseller, which is the C300 as well, of course, as the upcoming 4-cylinder only AMG model. So the big news, of course, with the C-Class is that it's now simply a 4-cylinder only range.
Despite right.
nomenclature, which suggests it might have a stonking, twin turbo V8.
It'll be an interesting fork in the road for Merc AMG, won't it? To whether or not there's an appetite.
Yep, that's right. People will go, holy fork in the road when they see that.
So, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but it's, by all accounts, this car should reestablish this particular series as one of the leaders in that class. So we're talking about BMW 3 Series, Audi A4, that sort of.
And it's been that model over time has been emblematic of Merc's move into the mainstream, hasn't it? It's often a top 10 player as an individual model in the sales results. And
correct, James. And yep. And just to wrap everything I've just set up, these cars all have one thing in common. They're adopting or have adopted electrification, and the combustion version of all the models I've spoken to, such as the Arteon and the C-Class, may be the last generations of these before they kind of wholly move into electrification. And so there will be a coming together of the electric versions and the combustion version. So I guess the takeaway from all this is, if you like your old school combustion sedans or electrification,
buy a Maybach V12 twin turbo.
Exactly. But they're still around, and there's still life left in the sedan.
Well, that is great. I mean, aside from everything else that we've covered over the last couple of weeks, just in the hatch and sedan area, there's so much exciting product heading our way. That's great, and that's the insight, I think, too, Byron, is that they're all prepared and ready for the shift to alternate powertrains. So
exactly.
All right. Well, let's get that's good. Let's get into our garage where cars that we can drive and have been driving reside. And Tim, if I can start with you, it's not exactly bleeding edge when it comes to the powertrain under the bonnet. Fill us in on what you've been driving. Give us an intro, good or bad, and a summation.
Look, so I last week spent some time with the Jeep Compass Trailhawk. So the Compass sits in small SUV segment, but it's actually one of the largest models in that segment. The Trailhawk's the flagship, so it's got some off-road ability. It's trail rated, as Jeep likes to remind everyone.
Yes, trail rated. Yes.
It's also the only vehicle left in its class with a diesel powertrain. There, you cannot find a small mainstream brand SUV with a diesel powertrain. In fact, the only small SUV you can find is a BMW X1. That's it.
Yep.
So if you're really gagging for a diesel, go
This
off.
is it, right?
This is it. But I probably wouldn't do that.
I see.
Look, there's a few things to like about it. That the Uconnect multimedia system, they have improved that out of sight. The graphics, everything about that, the functionality, I was really surprised, because I think remember the old, like the 300, Chrysler 300, the Uconnect in that wasn't very good.
Okay.
They have just spent so much money on this thing. And honestly, I think it's better than certainly a lot of the Japanese competitors. Maybe not quite as intuitive as the Koreans, Kia and Hyundai, but just a good system. Very spacious interior. They've completely redesigned the interior. It's just a facelift, but they have completely redone the interior, and it's a top job.
Okay.
There's a few things to not like about the seats. Are a bit weird. You feel like you're sitting on top of it, and it's all a bit weird. Sadly, there's not a lot of positives for me with this vehicle. The drive experience wasn't great. The ride is very busy and quite sharp and unpleasant. I know Byron has an opinion on this. I thought the engine could have done with a little bit more grunt, as I think he pointed out as well, that it's got some really good mid-range grunt, but quite a bit of lag. It's quite noisy. The steering is terrible. I just found it. This is not the kind of vehicle that you have for like a little city SUV.
Right.
And I'm not sure what this is the vehicle for.
Well, that's begs the question, doesn't it? Is it a cowcocker using it on their property or something? Is its real shining star is in the off-road capability? Or
well, I didn't get to take it off-road, so I can't speak to that. But the other problem is that it starts at just under $52,000. Now, that's recommended retail. So mine had a few extras in it, and on the road, it was $60,000. Now, sorry, but I'll go the Audi Q3, that variant that's about the same price, or any other high-end, mainstream SUV. It will be quite
before you'll opt for that one. Okay.
100%. The value is just not there at all.
Okay.
It's a very specific market, isn't it? Like if you want a Jeep and you need it to be small, but you live on a property and you've got money to burn, maybe that's when you should buy this car. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Tim. Thank you. Byron, a very interesting vehicle. Probably not going to be used on a property to get around, but fill us in.
That's right. So, in my personal opinion, the car or the star car of 2021 was, of course, the Hyundai Ioniq 5. So I had the fortunate pleasure of having the base car, the $71,900 two-wheel drive version of the Ioniq 5, with two-wheel drive and a single motor. And I've got to say that car exceeded my expectations.
Okay.
From a packaging point of view, things that we've all spoken about already. That great interior, the striking head-turning design. I had people stop me at traffic lights, running up to the car, saying, "What's it like? What is
Unreal.
it? Is
Isn't
it great?"
Yeah.
It just, that car did not disappoint. Riding on those large 19 or 20-inch wheels, I can't remember. I think it's 19-inch or 20-inch wheels. It has a great ride. It's quiet on the freeway, and it really deserves that accolade of being just one of the
and it's a big car.
models.
It's a big car, isn't it? I mean, from 10 meters away, it looks like a hatchback to me.
Absolutely.
But the closer you get to it, the bigger it becomes, and the more SUV-like.
Absolutely. And the 2 points I wanted to make are, first, if you're in the market for a Model 3 Tesla or that sort of thing, you just have to check this car out first before you sign the dotted line, because it has the integrity, the hatchback practicality, that space, as you said, because of its size. It's quasi SUV-ish, so you'd maybe consider it over a Model Y or a Model or is it Model
X?
Y, the Model X? Yeah, that sort of thing. It's just absolutely right up there. But the biggest surprise to me, and this really shocked me, is that I decided, because I had it over a 10-day period, I decided to go to a seaside town hundreds of kilometers away. So
I see.
I charged it up, and I drove from Melbourne along the Colac Highway to Apollo Bay, and that's pretty far away, and then drove the ocean road back with my partner and our dog and a few bits and pieces.
Yep.
And on one charge, we saw 420 kilometers with range left over
To spare.
And
wow.
with air conditioning on in a 35-degree day, driving it as if it, like, absolutely no regard to hypermiling or trying to preserve electricity, just using it as a car.
Well,
That's real world stuff.
Lana the Labrador will not stand for a hot car on a summer road trip.
Exactly, yeah. But she wants to be seen in a hot car, and this is what the Ioniq 5.
Yeah.
So I mean, that just absolutely, no pun intended, but it shocked me that the amount of range, real world range that this car got. I mean, I don't think I've owned electric cars. I used to have a Nissan Leaf, and I've championed them, but you have to be pretty careful or optimistic or lucky to get even close to the stated range. In this car, it's a reality. Well, it certainly was for the Ioniq 5 two-wheel drive single motor version that I had at $71,900, which to me makes it a great value bargain.
And Byron, just to round it off, in many ways, the Mathioudakis collection rivals the likes of Jay Leno or the Peterson Museum. That it's growing all the time. The stock is turned over on a regular basis.
Maybe more Jay Low, but yes.
Jay Low. You've added to that. Just quickly tell us about your latest acquisition.
Oh, that's right. Look, I just have to tell you that I have joined the not Jay Leno, or Jay Low, but Jay Car ranks.
Yes.
A Holden Camira.
Unreal.
Just a 1988 JE executive wagon.
And it's not your first Camira ownership.
No, I've collected all Camiras over my driving career. I had a JB SLX. I had briefly a JD SL, and now I have a JE executive wagon.
Unbelievable.
230,000 kilometers. I picked it up in 40-degree heat out in Berry in South Australia, drove it back down to Melbourne via a whole bunch of other places, more than 750 kilometers, ice cold air conditioning.
Wow,
no problem. And 9 liters per 100 kilometers in a Holden Camira.
That's amazing.
You know,
Says it all.
Supercar. That's what they said. And Yeah. So let you know that. Yeah. So
all right.
that was my January.
Now I'll wrap this section up with the car I've been driving lately, and the review. And I think Tim, your review is on the site as well.
That's right.
Mine is on the CarsGuide site as well. Ioniq 5, Byron. That's for review with us, is it not?
No, this was just me,
having a steer.
My wish come true. Yeah.
All right, very good. Yeah. So I was in the Audi Q2, and this is the 40 TFSI, which is the premium out of two models under the SQ2, which is your performance car. $10 under 50,000, so it's at that $50,000 mark. 2-litre turbo petrol 4, 7-speed dual clutch auto. It's all-wheel drive. It has the Quattro system. 140 kilowatts, 320 Newton meters. It's only 4.2 meters long, so it's city-sized. 0 to 100 about 6.7, so it's brisk. For sure. It's lined up against the likes on money. It's almost exactly dollar for dollar for certain versions of the BMW X2, Mini Countryman, Volvo XC40. There are others that are above it and below it, but those three seem to be a pretty decent competitive set. The strengths, strong performance from that engine. It's really impressive. It's space efficient too for such a compact little SUV. The back seat accommodated me at 183 centimeters with headroom, legroom. I was really impressed by that. The value, it's well equipped at that money. $50,000 is a pretty decent chunk of change, but you do get a lot of features included. I won't bore you with the details. And it's a pretty engaging drive. It steers nicely. There's good road feel. The downside is that it's just a bit firm. You pay a price for that. It's a little bit firm in the ride. And you want to, if you're going to test drive one, take it to a road that you know has seen better days and make sure that you're ready for that. It may be fine, maybe not.
Are adaptive dampers available with that, James? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge. Yeah. It might be, but I'm just answering off the cuff. Then the other thing is it's maybe not just an Audi, but the media display is not a touchscreen. So you find yourself using a rotary controller, which can click side to side. It's got a writing pad on the top and you can twirl the thing, but it's just, in my view, not as easy and safe as being able to just lean over and press a button. It's obviously the school of thought that says looking over, leaning into a screen is dangerous, but I'd argue using a controller and looking at the screen anyway to try and navigate your way around is on balance a worse option. And I found it frustrating. And the other thing was there's only modest backseat power and storage options. There's no fold-down armrest with cup holders. There are no outlets for powering up anything. No vents for rear seat passengers. So, okay, it's a small car and the air's going to circulate pretty rapidly, but it's always nice to have those. So there are a few little downsides, but I thought it was an impressive car in many ways. Okay, now, there we go. Now, feedback. Comment of the week. It's on top of the shipping container at the front of the CarsGuide forecourt. This is what stood out. But before we do mention our comment of the week, we did make an omission last week when we had a few people tell us that we missed the Model Y from SUVs headed our way in 2022. The update on it is they're planning to open orders. We understand maybe announce pricing later this month, meaning deliveries probably won't start until May or June at the earliest. So it's arriving this year, but not immediately. That's our understanding. But the comment that caught our attention was Lofty Visions, a regular listener viewer. He says, interesting podcast again, fellas. Over here in McGowanistan, so I don't know whether that means he's a fan or otherwise of the Western Australian Premier. He said it hit over 40 degrees at Christmas. Our power went out several times due to everyone switching on their air cons. I dread to think how Western Power will cope when everyone's charging their EVs too. And I think that does open up a pretty basic question around infrastructure and wholesale adoption of electric vehicles. And maybe, you take advantage of off-peak and all of that, but a whole bunch of cars being charged up at the same time, it's a question that needs to be addressed, I suspect. What do you guys make of that?
Well, that's the argument for developing fuel cell and hydrogen technology in my mind. Yeah, because I can't see the antiquated electrification system coping with everyone charging their laptops.
As Lofty says already, everyone putting on the aircon and the lights go down in their whole town.
Yeah, I can't see. Yeah, I can't see. Yeah, especially in Victoria.
I think that's correct, though, Byron. Like we have to look at the entire grid and how ancient the entire energy system in this country is. So I don't think it's an excuse to not roll out electric vehicles. I think it's a perfect excuse to go, well, let's get ready for this, which we should have done a long time ago, and completely rethink our entire energy system in this country. Obviously, renewables and all that kind of stuff, but to have the ability to support all of this, you can do it. You've just got to have the guts to do it as
it's
a
true,
government.
Because some of it is still like a hamster wheel, isn't it? It's pretty feeble in various places. All right. Well,
I'm thinking just one thing. Just want to say, I think that the vehicle to building like returning charge from an electric car, I think that sort of thing should be made mandatory.
That's
an
interesting
cars sold in Australia or anywhere in the world, really. So at least during these times of of blackouts or whatever, the cars can actually give back to the grid.
Well, maybe when we're living in Mathioudakis, that will be an edict that everybody has to feed power back in.
Hang on, I'll just get my minion.
That is a terrifying thought. Oh my God!
I'm just talking
to our fearless leader, Byron Mathioudakis. Okay, now with that, we have reached the finish line. So it's time to say thank you, Tim, and thank you, Byron.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Tim.
And thanks to our champion of podcast perfection, paddle pop expert and owl enthusiast, Mr. Pritchard, for his wizardry on the buttons and sliders. Today, he's wearing a T-shirt saying, last name hungry, first name always. Squid pants and crocheted tank slippers, an incredible ensemble. Jump into the conversation. Cars Guide's on Facebook and Instagram, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Apple Podcast listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the show. 5 is the preferred number of stars. That would be great. Thank you. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe to the Cars Guide YouTube channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, COVID travel restrictions are easing up a bit. And a mate of mine was telling me he was recently interstate for a couple of days on business. And he said to his young bloke, look, you can borrow the car. You can borrow my car for the first time while I'm away. It's kind of a coming of age thing. You can borrow Dad's car. Anyway, he arrives back home, hugs and kisses with his partner, but senses something's up. Sure enough, his son saunters into the room and says, Dad, I've got some good news and some bad news about the car. My mate says, okay, give me the good news first. He says, well, the good news is all the airbags work perfectly. There wasn't much conversation after.